Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Lots of things piling up today. I want to first of all wish you Happy Pi Day, which I was reminded of by Edgar just before the program. Happy Pi Day 3.14. Also,
no. 3.141592655 and so on.
Well, I was going to say that, but I didn't actually know any of that. So I would have said it had I known it, but and so on. But also the first work day of daylight savings time, my favorite time of the year. So happy beginning of daylight savings time and Pi Day. And Jimmy Akin is our guest. Hello, Jimmy Akin.
You were just anxious. Hello, Cy Kellett. You were just anxious to spring forward, weren't you?
I was actually.
That's the kind of guy you are. Yeah.
That is exactly how I am. As a matter of fact, that anxiety to spring forward starts the day that we fall back. I'm ready. I'm ready for it to be over the day that it starts.
Just don't like being in that fallback position at all, do you?
No, I don't. I always like to have a fallback position, but I don't like being in it. The number is 888-318-7884. We'll do open forum this hour to start the week with Jimmy Akin. Your calls, your questions on anything are welcome. Second hour, Rylene Simpson will be here, and we're going to talk about same-sex attraction and the Catholic faith, the Catholic perspective on that. If you have questions about that, if you have challenges about that, you're welcome to call on the second hour, 888-318-7884. Jimmy Akin is senior apologist here at Catholic Answers, the author of a whole bunch of books, including The Bible is a Catholic Book, and the proprietor of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. I can't remember what dropped Friday. Friday was not. It was 2 weeks ago. That was the donors' questions, right?
Yes. And patrons' questions.
Patrons' questions. And last week was.
Last week was part one of a two-part interview with physicist Edwin May about research into psychic phenomena.
I'm going to just go crazy then and guess that this Friday is part two of a two-part interview with physicist Edwin May.
I haven't checked the schedule lately, but that sounds vaguely familiar, yeah.
Okay, all right. 888-318-7884, the number. You are welcome to ask whatever you like. 888-318-7884. You all probably know the drill. When Jimmy's here, we really mean it. Anybody can ask anything at all. 888-318-7884. Already lines beginning to fill up, so we'll start with Austin in New York watching on YouTube. Austin, thanks for your call. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hi, my question is, what's the difference between expiation, propitiation, satisfaction, and atonement? So, basically, which of the words fall into the definition of the other? Because I know with, wisdom, you can say wisdom is knowledge and understanding because they're in the definition of wisdom. So I assume, the same thing applies to these words.
Well, you're right, Austin, that these terms have a substantial amount of overlap in what linguists would call their semantic range. The semantic range of a word is the range of different meanings that it can have. And all of these are used to gesture at the action of God's grace in our lives and how we relate to God and how we deal with sin. And that's changed over history. I mean, obviously, the procedures for dealing with sin were different in ancient Israel than they were after the Christian age began. But basically, all of these terms converge and overlap in the way they're used, and that means that we can point out some of the nuances that each individual term has, but they're all with slightly different nuances gesturing at one big reality. So to take the individual terms, you mentioned propitiation. And propitiation, the basic idea of propitiation is turning away wrath. And that's one of the things that happens when sin is dealt with. God's wrath is turned away. Atonement is a very interesting term. It's probably the only standard theological term that comes to us from English, because normally theological terms have Greek roots or Latin roots or things like that, but propitiation actually has English roots. If you look at it and break it apart into English words, well, at is an English word, one, O-N-E, is an English word, and put at and one together and you get atone, and that's really where it comes from, is the atonement is the state, that's what the ment refers to, the state of being at one. And so this is another consequence of dealing with sin. When our sins are dealt with, we and God are able to be at one, or in a state of harmony. Another synonym for atonement might be reconciliation, where people are reconciled or made at one with each other so that they're on the same side, they're in agreement. Satisfaction, the notion there from its roots is to make enough. So this calls out another aspect of dealing with sins. Christ's sacrifice is sufficient, that it makes enough of a reparation for our sins that we're able to be forgiven on that basis. So Christ makes satisfaction for us. And there's a sense in which we also make satisfaction, not for the eternal consequences of our sin, which we can't pay for, only Christ can do that, but for the this worldly consequences of them, where we can do things as kind of a gesture of apology, and by praying and doing penance and doing good works to help other people and so forth, and all of that makes satisfaction in a different sense. Finally, you asked about expiation, and this one comes from Latin words. In the middle of expiation, you've got the word pia, which is a form of the word pious. And ex, in this case, means thoroughly. It's an emphatic use of the term. And so expiation means, based on its roots, to make thoroughly pious. And that's something else that happens when our sins are dealt with, is we enter a thoroughly pious relationship with God as a result of dealing with our sins. And these are just a few of the terms that crop up and that have overlapping meanings. I talk a lot more about this in my book, The Drama of Salvation. So maybe, Cy, we could send Austin a copy of The Drama of Salvation.
Sure. Austin, can you hang on a quick minute and we'll get your address and send you that book?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you for the call, for the question. Edgar, you got that? The Drama of Salvation. All right. The number is 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. Let's see. Where shall we go next? Let's go down to James in Pensacola, Florida, listening on Guadalupe Radio. James, thanks for the call. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hi. Is this me?
You know what? I think I pushed the wrong button. Who we got?
Hi, it's Nate. I can wait.
No, that's all right. Go
Nate,
ahead.
But I can wait. Jimmy. Okay.
Go ahead.
You are on now. What is your question?
I appreciate it, Jimmy. A couple weeks ago, February 18th, for the Bible questions, I called in and asked about failing. And I was wondering if we could return to that real quick. You answered that it was possibly biological, with helping reproduction, and possibly it was just a temporary thing, like it was a culture thing. But I wanted to ask about that and say, like, the argument from nature would not be limited to just a culture. It would not be limited to just a time or a place, in my opinion. Wouldn't that mean all time? And wasn't it the case that Paul was writing to Corinth, saying, ignore the local customs because they are sinful? This is the custom. So he was overriding a local custom instead of saying, this is the local custom. So those two things. Argument from nature is objective, and he was saying, ignore the culture. Thank you.
Okay, so I sympathize with you whenever you see the term nature in an argument. It is logical to think about, is this something that is demanded by human nature? And so I don't easily or quickly set aside such things. However, if you study Greek usage, the term for nature that Paul uses here, physis, means more than just written into the laws of physical nature or the laws of human nature. The term also gets used for custom. And so it is legitimate, depending on the context, to look at the term physis and translate it as custom. In which case Paul would be saying, doesn't even custom teach you this? Or common social mores or something like that. And so merely because the word phusis gets used in this passage, it doesn't mean it's a lockdown argument for this has to happen everywhere at all times, in all circumstances, in all cultures. And it is pretty clear that it doesn't, because this is not, unlike some things like belief in an afterlife or belief in the divine, veiling of women is not a human universal. It's not something that is found in every culture at all times, and it's not found in every culture in a worship context. And if women don't have to go veiled all the time, which Paul does not hold that they do, he's only talking about a worship context, then why would their biology require them to have a head covering only in a worship context? If that was something fundamental to human nature, why would that be? And there's no obvious answer there. And all of that suggests that we're not looking at a human universal here. We're not looking at something that's fundamental to human nature, and thus we're not looking at something that has to apply in all times and cultures. And that's the judgment that the magisterium has made. It's ultimately the magisterium's job to look at scripture and tradition and tell us what the boundaries are. And the magisterium has looked at this passage and concluded that it is not something that applies to all cultures. This, if you want to look that up, you can check an instruction that came out from the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith in the 1970s called Inter Inseniores. And in that, they talk about this passage, and they note that it's something that applied to Paul's culture, but does not apply to every culture, and therefore is not absolutely required in ours. And so women are not required to veil according to the magisterium of the church in worship context today.
Nate, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much. I appreciate the call and the question. I'm sorry I said James when I came to you. That's our friend Nate in Dallas, Texas. James in Pensacola. We'll get to you right after the break. We have to take a quick break. It's open forum. Jimmy Akin is our guest. Right back after this.
Catholic Answers Live.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
The most original and exclusive Catholic content is on EWTN Radio.
If one person's faith has been nourished by this program, it's worth it. And knowing that people of all different walks of life are listening, but also getting something out of it, that's the excitement I find in it.
EWTN Open Line Monday with Father John Trujillo. Tonight, 10 Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Heading right back to the phones, although exciting thing happened at the break. We passed Pi time on Pi Day. It was 3:14:15.
Yes, indeed.
Except in this studio where we have not changed the clock yet, it was 2:14, but we'll get to it sometime before June.
I can't be responsible for that.
No, you cannot. We can't have you going around having to change everybody's clock. James, I'm coming to you. I got to just read this. It's store-wide sale right now. Everything's on sale, 10 to 25% and more in some cases. Hundreds of great Catholic resources to choose from. You can get cases of bulk books as well, like Trent's Why We're Catholic, Jimmy's The Bible is the Catholic Book, Joe's The Early Church Was the Catholic Church. You pay just $3 a copy when you buy a case of 20. All that's going on right now at shop.catholic.com. James in Pensacola, Florida, listening on Guadalupe Radio. I apologize. I called your name and then pushed the wrong button. Did I do it again? Is James there with us? This is turning into a very sad story. All right, now I got to come back to James. You'll have to check the line, see if he's there. Maybe he's mad. I don't know. Maybe put it up. He might have muted it too. Greg in Connecticut. We'll try you. Greg in Connecticut, listening on EWTN.com. We're glad to have you, Greg. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hey, Good evening, and thank you for taking my call. And I got to say, Si, you're great.
Oh.
And Jimmy, you're amazing. And
Well,
this is a question I kind of just wanted to ask you specifically. A Jewish friend of mine has asked me about the fact that, well, he doesn't believe in Jesus as being the Jewish Messiah because the prophecy of Elijah coming first was not fulfilled. And I'm just going to sit back and listen to your answer. And thank you so much.
Okay. Well, there are a few responses that I could make to that. The first one is sort of a direct response, which would be to say, actually, the prophecy of Elijah coming first ahead of the Messiah was fulfilled. One of the things we find is that prophecy often gets fulfilled in ways that are not entirely expected. And so we have to be sensitive to the fact that the prophecy of Elijah might not be fulfilled in exactly the way that people might have thought it would have been. And that's something that we actually find. Now, one of the things that we learn from the Hebrew scriptures is that when Elijah was assumed into heaven, that he threw his mantle around his associate Elisha, which is a symbol for adopting him as his successor. To spread your garment over someone was a symbolic gesture in the Old Testament that was used to effectively say, this person is mine, I recognize this person as my successor and so forth, or as my relative. And so it was a kind of a form of adoption. And even though Elijah and Elisha were not related, Elisha did this symbolic act to adopt him as his successor, and Elisha made the request, when you go up, I want to inherit a double portion of your spirit. And a double portion is what the firstborn son received in a family. And so even though there were multiple prophets at this point in Israel's history, all operating at the same time, Elisha is in essence saying, I want to be your firstborn son as a prophet, and I want to inherit, therefore, a double portion of your spirit. And Elijah says, well, if you see me as I go up, then you'll get that request answered. And then he does see him, and he's like, my father, as he's going up. He does see him, and he's then recognized by the other prophets as having a double portion of Elijah's spirit on him. And they see him and they say, the spirit of Elijah is resting on Elisha. And so we see in this, just from the Hebrew scriptures here, we see how Elisha carries on the prophetic ministry of Elijah in Elijah's absence. And the fact we see that happening here, that one prophet is able to function as the new Elijah, means we need to be open to the idea that another prophet could do it too, because God can give the prophetic power, the prophetic spirit of Elijah to anyone he chooses. And we see in the New Testament, in the Christian scriptures, that he does. If you look at Luke chapter 1, dealing with the birth of John the Baptist, we are told prophetically that he will have the spirit of Elijah, that he's going to fulfill this, even though he knows full well he's not personally Elijah. He's not like reincarnated or something. This is something that comes up in the first chapter of the Gospel of John, where people ask him, "Are you Elijah?" And he says, "No, because Elijah didn't die, and therefore he's not been reincarnated." But he does operate with the spirit and power of Elijah. And Jesus, when asked about the Elijah prophecy, when the disciples come to him and say, why do people say that Elijah must come first if you're the Messiah? He says, well, he did come first and people didn't recognize him. And the disciples realize he's talking about John the Baptist. And so the Gospels confirm that the prophecy of Elijah coming as the herald of the Messiah was true, and it was fulfilled in John the Baptist. He was the new Elijah, just like Elisha was the new Elijah in the immediate wake of Elijah's departure. So we actually have more than one new Elijah. We have Elisha originally inheriting his prophetic mantle, and then later we have John the Baptist inheriting his prophetic mantle. And so that's how I'd respond to the question directly. But there's another response which I'd make, which is this. One of the prophecies that is found in the Hebrew Scriptures is that the Gentiles will come to worship the God of the Jews, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Has that happened? Yeah, in a big way. There are vastly more Gentiles today who worship the God of Abraham than there are Jews. There are only a few million Jews in the world, but like 3 billion Gentiles worship the God of Abraham. Well, through whom did that happen? It was through Jesus of Nazareth. He's the linchpin. He's the one through whom the Gentiles began to embrace the God of Abraham. And given that indicates Jesus has an extraordinarily important place in God's plan. And that is an argument that he is, in fact, who he said he was, namely the Son of God and the Messiah.
Greg, thank you. Wonderful question. I'm going to leave it there because lines are full. I hope that was helpful to you, and thank you also for the very kind words. Let's go to James in Pensacola, Florida again, listening on Guadalupe Radio. James, have I got you this time? Oh, seriously?
I'm here.
Oh, hey, there he is. Hi, James.
I was listening so intently that my cheek had hit the mute button on my cell phone. Oh, well.
Well, I hit the wrong button at the beginning, James, so together we got this.
We're balancing it out.
Now that we've...
Pi is an irrational number. Just keep that in mind.
That's why I said and so on. And now that we've concluded today's episode of Mistaken Button Pushing Theater, how can I help?
All right. I'm interested in your opinion of what Jesus meant by there are many rooms in my Father's house. And I thank you. I'm going to turn this off and listen to you on the radio.
Thanks, James, and thanks for your patience.
Yes, thank you for your patience. And in terms of what he means that there's a place for all of you. Anybody who repents and turns to God, God has a place for them in heaven. And so you don't have to worry about am I going to run out of room or anything like that. No, are you going to be turned away because Motel 6 in heaven is all booked up? The answer is no. God has as many places for people as he needs, and so you don't have to worry about not getting a place because Jesus is going to go prepare one for us, and there's lots of room. In fact, God is the infinite creator of everything. He can always create more room if he needs, so don't worry about it. Lots of places for everybody.
Again, thank you very much, James. Let's go to, we got time. All right, let's go to George in Iowa, listening on Iowa Catholic Radio. George, thank you for your call. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Yes. Seeing as beliefs are, I hear it often in apologetics, people choosing to believe, but as someone who's read into a lot of philosophical and epistemological arguments around theism and Catholicism, it doesn't really make much sense to call beliefs choices. We can take actions like look into reasonings behind arguments, like what is the quote-unquote evidence for this and such.
Okay.
And we may present a different belief to the world. Some people might try to save face and say that, they don't believe in something or they do believe in something. But deep down, what someone believes is a compulsion and it happens. And then they find, I believe this now.
So I
don't believe.
Well, I'm not exactly sure what you're asking Jimmy, though.
So it doesn't make sense to keep referring to beliefs by choices. People not choosing not to believe in God, or Romans 20, which says that the knowledge of God is written on people's hearts, which if you can't interpret that in a consistent way, if you just use it to mean whatever you want.
It seems like we got cut off there. Maybe. Oh, there's George. George, you dropped out there. Can you say that again?
Yeah. I believe it's Romans 20 that said something like, the knowledge of God is written on people's hearts. But evidentially speaking, the world is much more complicated than that, and people's beliefs are built up over, many layers of experience. And when someone looks inside themselves, there isn't a point where they can choose to believe something. They can choose to look into something, but a belief is a result of those things. It is not a choice in itself.
You could probably hear the music, George. So if you wait on a couple of minutes, we'll get Jimmy to give his take on belief and how we come to belief right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the Church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com. Here's a question. Is it really possible to be friends with someone who died 2,000 years ago? Maybe the problem is that we've grown way too comfortable with the story of Jesus. Nice man, right? Taught us to love one another, said not to judge people. We celebrate his birthday every year. It's time to put away this small, safe version of Jesus, says Cy Kellett. Nobody that bland could have transformed the world. In A Teacher of Strange Things, Cy presents Jesus Christ undiluted by sentiment, with all his radical words and deeds uncensored. Do you know someone, your son or daughter perhaps, or maybe your mom or dad, who needs the friendship of Jesus Christ? Do you? Order your copy of A Teacher of Strange Things by visiting shop.catholic.com today or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
God is always ready to receive your urgent prayer intentions.
Join us with yours tomorrow on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on most of these EWTN stations.
Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. Second hour, Rylene Simpson will be here with us, and we're going to talk about same-sex attraction from a Catholic perspective. We always enjoy our conversations with Rylene. I think you will too. If you have questions in that regard, you're very welcome to call next hour. This hour, right now, we have George on the line. It's open forum. Jimmy Akin is our guest. And George, your point seems to be that there's a compulsion as far as what we believe. But could you give me just a one sentence? What's the question for Jimmy?
Yes. Is it right to? Do you think that there are people that no one? Do you think that no one honestly disbelieves in God after they've heard all of your arguments?
No, I wouldn't presume to judge somebody else's heart. Now, you referred in before the break to some material that from Romans and about beliefs and so forth, and to the extent to which they should be described as choices. And I thought I'd touch on a few of those points, and then I'll get a direct answer to your question, or a fuller answer to your question. It's not Romans 20 you're thinking of, because there is no Romans 20. Romans only goes up to 16. But if you want to reread the passage, the one you're thinking of is in Romans 2. And Paul does not say there that everybody is suppressing the knowledge of God, or certainly not in any conscious way. What he actually says, like in Romans 2:15, he's talking about how knowledge of the laws of God are written on people's hearts, because he points to the fact that Gentiles, even though they don't know the law of Moses, they do have consciences, and their consciences will give them some information about, like, hey, you shouldn't have done that, or you should do this. Even Gentiles know that it's not a good idea to murder or commit adultery or lie or steal or things like that. And when they do those things, their consciences, at least unless they're sociopaths, their consciences tell them, you shouldn't have done that. That was wrong. And so Paul is not saying that all Gentiles have a conscious knowledge of God and they just choose not to believe in God. In fact, he's making a much more modest claim, which is that they have a basic knowledge of morality, and the laws of God are in their hearts in that sense. And he even raises the possibility in this very passage of, on the day of judgment, some Gentiles may be excused because they followed the light of God, the light of God's laws and his truth as they understood it, and and Paul envisions the possibility of Gentiles who don't know the law of Moses having their consciences excuse them on the day of judgment. And so rather than condemning everybody who's not a conscious believer, Paul actually may be doing the reverse in this passage. Now, when it comes to beliefs, I think that we have to be careful in discussing the relationship between belief and choice. There is a sense in which beliefs are choices, but not all choices are equally easy. I mean, let's suppose you've got someone who's become addicted to a drug, like, I don't know what, cocaine. And they're a regular cocaine user, and then they decide they want to stop. Well, if they try to just stop cold turkey, they're going to have problems because they have become habituated to the use of cocaine, and it will be difficult for them to break that cycle. That doesn't mean they can't do it. It just means it's not an easy matter to just flip a switch and no longer be habituated to cocaine. And in the same way, people have beliefs that they are used to, they've held all their life, they're very firmly ingrained in a person's belief structure at this point, and as a result, you can't just turn on a dime. Yes, our beliefs are things we can ultimately choose to accept or choose to reject, but that doesn't mean you can do it easily or instantly. But it doesn't mean, on the other hand, that they're not choices at all, because just like you can choose to become habituated to cocaine, and you can choose to become dehabituated to cocaine, you can also choose to adopt a new belief system or choose to reject that belief system. And I know because I've done that, and lots of people have done it. And it's not simply a process that is beyond our volition. In his Pensées, the philosopher Blaise Pascal actually talks about the mechanics of if you want to be a Christian but you're finding it difficult to believe, here's what you do. And he lays out a simple practical program for habituating oneself to Christian belief, and says you do this and you'll find out, just like other people have, one day you realize, yeah, I really do believe this. So just because it's not an instant turn on the dime choice to reject a prior belief system that you've held for a long time doesn't mean it's not a choice in any sense of the word. In fact, it is a choice. And a lot of beliefs are ones where people can accept or reject beliefs very quickly. For example, let's take an example from the past year or two when we had COVID and we had all the, of course it's still out there, but I'm talking about let's say the beginning of the crisis, and you had Anthony Fauci come out and say, at the beginning of the pandemic, come out and say, don't worry, you don't need to use masks. And he actually said that. Well, lots of people believed him. they had never previously considered the question of should we use masks for COVID or not. It was a brand new question, and they didn't have any firm convictions on the matter. And then Anthony Fauci comes out, he's got credentials to his name, and he says, you don't need to use masks. And lots of people believed him. Right, they chose to believe him right on the spot. And then, a little bit later, he comes out and says, you absolutely must use masks. And a lot of people believed in that time. And a lot of people shifted between those two beliefs without a lot of internal anguish. And so this illustrates how if it's a claim you're not already invested in, actually it kind of is something that is within your control to say, do I choose to believe that or not? And we can also think of instances where people choose to reject something. Like there are lots of, unfortunately, even though our consciences, if they're well functioning, tell us we shouldn't commit adultery, there are people who do. And their spouses sometimes get hints and clues that their spouse is committing adultery. And that thought is so painful that even though they may have sufficient evidence in front of them to say, there's a serious possibility my spouse is cheating on me, they choose not to listen to that evidence. They make it as a conscious choice because they start thinking about if that's true, it would be really horrible, and I don't want to face that horrific possibility right now. And so I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to choose to believe that my spouse is faithful to me, even though I've got some evidence to the contrary, because the alternative is so horrible. So I would say that we shouldn't have a simple model of the relationship between beliefs and choices. It's not that they're unrelated, but it's also not the case that it's not the case that they're unrelated either way. They are related to each other, and there is a sense in which our beliefs are choices, but that doesn't mean they're easy choices all the time or instantaneous choices. Having said all that, do I believe that everyone who has heard my arguments regarding God and the Christian faith is automatically damned if they don't believe me? Of course not. I can't judge anybody's heart. I don't have telepathy sufficient to let me see what's going on and what choices they're making and what their past influences are. I can only do my best to present them with the best evidence and the best arguments that I can, and I can urge them to be open to those arguments and to take the case for the Christian faith seriously. And I can be confident that God will give them grace to enable them to do that. But I can't say that just because someone has heard me out that they're definitely going to be damned if they don't come to the conclusions that I want them to, because although I think I'm a pretty good apologist, I am neither Professor X and able to read their hearts, nor am I able to intuit exactly what they need to help them. And so I can only do the best I can and leave the rest up to God's grace.
Thanks, George. You're no Magneto either, Jimmy.
I try not to be.
I hope that was helpful, George. We'll take a quick break, right back with more Open Forum with Jimmy. And then next hour, Riley and Simpson here to talk about the Catholic Church, Catholic belief, and same-sex attraction.
Let us help you with your question today on Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
A special item at EWTNRC.com in the month of St. Joseph, is the St. Joseph Terror of Demons medal. This pendant depicts the Holy Family as St. Joseph holds the infant Jesus and stands on a terrified demon. With this EWTN exclusive item, St. Joseph's protection will always be near. To order, go to EWTNRC.com and search for item numbers 7EW18 or 7EW24.
We have a big problem. Our culture is dying, and souls are in danger of being lost. The answer is conversion to Jesus Christ in His church. St. Paul Street Evangelization is a Catholic organization, and we have hundreds of teams spreading the good news throughout the country. But we need your help. The harvest is great, but the laborers are few. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. Cy Kellett, your host, Jimmy Akin, our guest this hour, and it's open forum. And I don't know the last time when I talked about the store-wide sale if I mentioned $5 flat rate shipping. We've got that. Right now, if you live within the continental United States, there's no better time than right now to take advantage of this. Get all that savings that I talked about before, including 10, 25%, even more than 25% on some things at shop.catholic.com, and then get $5 flat rate shipping on all of it. Shop.catholic.com. Now we go to Anonymous in Pennsylvania, watching on YouTube. Anonymous, you there with us?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Anonymous. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
My question is, if there were guards at the tomb, Jesus, how could there have been guards if the Sabbath was on Saturday? So guards would actually be working on a Saturday.
Well, as Jesus himself points out, there are certain jobs that get to work on the Sabbath, even though most people are not supposed to work on the Sabbath. Certain people have jobs that require them to work on the Sabbath, like priests. And in the Gospels, Jesus points out, hey, look, if you want to be technical about the law, priests are breaking the Sabbath, but that's part of their job. They need to offer the proper sacrifices to God every single day of the week, even if it's a Sabbath, even if it's a new moon, even if it's one of the annual feasts. The priests got to go do their job at the temple. And the priests weren't the only ones. Jesus acknowledges that there can be practical necessities that people would recognize as requiring labor on the Sabbath in a way that's perfectly okay. And he points out other people recognize this in their own lives. Like he says, if a man has a sheep that falls in a pit on the Sabbath, won't he get it out? And Jesus is acknowledging, yeah, most people, most observant Jews in his day, if their livestock falls in a pit, they're going to get it out, even if it's on the Sabbath, because the exigent circumstances of the moment require that, and you don't leave your animals down at the bottom of a pit all day where they're in distress and they may be injured and they may attract predators with all their bleeding and end up dead and depriving you of a sheep that is your property. So you do what you need to get the sheep out of there. Well, one of the positions, it wasn't a sacred position like the high priest, but one of the positions that did work on the Sabbath were guards. Because what's the alternative to not having them work on the Sabbath? If you've got prisoners, and let's say you've got them kept in a pit or in a jail cell or something, and all the guards go home for the Sabbath and nobody's there, you're going to have a prison break. Because especially in the first century, they didn't have super strong materials like we do today, where you could just leave somebody in there and there'd be no way for them to find a way out in 24 hours. Back then, or today for that matter, if you could count on being unguarded one day a week, you could do little things to start getting yourself out. And even if it took you a while to cut through the bars or to loosen the stones in the wall, over time, you and the other prisoners could find a way out of that jail if you're left unguarded one day a week. Now, in this case, with the tomb, we have kind of the reverse situation, because it's not that Jesus is going to break out of the tomb. That's not what they're worried about. They're worried that his disciples are going to break in like thieves and steal the body. So we're kind of deterring a criminal act coming from the outside. And if you have reason to believe that criminals are going to attack a particular thing that you don't want to lose, whether it's like the body of Christ or a caravan full of gold that you're traveling with, or other valuables, and you suspect, okay, it's the Sabbath, and criminals are likely to attack us and steal this thing that we really want to keep, you're going to guard it even on the Sabbath, because the presence or justified suspicion that criminals are going to strike is something that justifies you doing guard duty even on the Sabbath. And that would be true not just at Jesus' tomb, it would be true at jails all throughout Judea, and it would be true on caravans that are between cities and having to travel. If you've got a bunch of valuables in your caravan and it's the Sabbath, you're still going to be alert for criminals trying to attack it, and you're going to be guarding your valuables.
I'm going to leave it there because we'll see who else we can get on this hour. But Anonymous, thanks very much. I hope that answer was helpful to you. Going to go down to Falls Church, Georgia now. Thomas, watching on YouTube in Falls Church. You are next. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy Akin.
Hey, guys. You able to hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your work that you do. I love listening to you guys. It's been super helpful.
Thank you.
I have a quick question about our Lenten almsgiving, and I'm trying to moderate things and make good decisions. But if Jimmy, you have kind of some principles as to how the church views things, like, for example, if you're trying to decide, you're trying to save up to buy a new house or a new car or something like that, how does that weigh up against kind of our obligations for almsgiving? And I'll just sort of leave it at that and let you answer.
Okay. Well, there's no single formula here. There's no like mathematical equation that the church has developed where you plug in all the relevant variables and then it spits out the answer for here's how much you should give. Here's how much you should give. I would say that one guideline that we want to honor, if we at all can, is we want a place for giving in our administration of our finances, even if we do need to largely be saving up for a house or paying a loan or medical bills or whatever it may be. We do need to prudently plan for our future, but at the same time, we should have a role for giving in whatever we're doing now. And what that level of giving is going to be will reasonably vary from one person to another, and not just from one person to another, but from one time to another, because people go through different phases in their careers. So like when people are just starting their careers, they tend to be making a lot less money than they are at the peak of their careers, and then they tend to be making less money again towards the end of their careers, where maybe they're retired and they're just working part-time or something. And so there's kind of an earning cycle arc that people have over the course of their careers. And whatever phase of that you're in, I would say you should try to do something by way of giving and proportionate to what you're able to afford. So if you're just at the beginning of your career, I would say give something, but you probably need to be using, since your resources at that point in life are typically very limited, you will need to devote a much higher proportion of them to saving for the future and so forth. When you're at the other end of your career, you may, again, be in reduced circumstances. You may need to be spending most of what you have as income on daily expenses and on medical expenses and things like that. But hopefully by this point you've saved up a good bit, and you can use that in your will, if nothing else, to do charitable good after your passing. Hopefully, though, we want to be generous people, and we want to not get out of the habit of giving. And so I would say it's more important to give something, even if it's not a lot, in every stage of life. Give something, and then do your best to proportion it around your other needs, given the current state of your needs and current state of your income.
Thomas, can leave it there. I hope that was helpful. Thank you very much for the question. Let's go to Francesca in Southern Ohio, listening on Ave Maria Radio. Francesca, go ahead with your question for Jimmy Akin.
Hi, and thank you for letting me be on here.
We're happy to have you, Francesca.
I had a question. How would you explain Ash Wednesday and Lent to a non-Catholic Catholic. My boyfriend, he's not Catholic, but I was born and raised in the faith all my life, and I have trouble trying to explain things to him sometimes.
Okay. Well, one thing I'd say is we've got a lot of resources at Catholic.com, and I also have some at JimmyAkin.com that talk about Lent and that explain it. So you might check online there, both at Catholic.com and JimmyAkin.com, and see if you find something. Just put in the word Lent and, see what resources come up, and maybe one of them would explain things in a way that your boyfriend can understand. However, to just take a quick explanation of it, one of the things we find in Scripture is that there are times of spiritual preparation when you're getting ready for something. And we see this at various points in the Old Testament, but we also see it in the New Testament, because Jesus, prior to his ministry, gets ready for his ministry. You can read about this in Matthew chapter 3 and also in Luke chapter 3. He gets ready for his ministry on earth by having a period of 40 days that he spends in the wilderness fasting and praying. And he uses that 40-day period of fasting and prayer to prepare himself for his adult ministry. And Lent is something like that. Now, obviously, we're not Jesus Christ, but we're followers of Jesus Christ, and we want to prepare ourselves for Easter, which is the most important holiday in the Christian year. The resurrection of Jesus is actually more important. The death and resurrection of Jesus is more important on the calendar than Christmas, even, because it was his death and resurrection that redeemed us from our sins. That's an important event, and we want to commemorate it, and we want to spiritually prepare to commemorate it, or for the annual commemoration. So we spiritually prepare ourselves for Easter, for Good Friday and Easter, with a period. It's not exactly 40 days, but it's approximately 40 days of prayer and fasting. And so we're, in essence, spending, like Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness to prepare for his ministry, we as his followers are sort of figuratively spending 40 days in the wilderness to prepare for his death and resurrection, for our remembrance of his death and resurrection. And that's essentially what Lent is. Ash Wednesday is just the first day of Lent. And the reason it's called Ash Wednesday is, well, because it happens on a Wednesday, and it's a day where ashes are traditionally placed on our heads, which was a symbol of repentance in the Old Testament. People would put ashes on their heads when they wanted to signal that I'm repenting and I'm expressing sorrow for sin. And they also serve as a reminder of our death, because in Genesis, God tells Adam, dust you are, and to dust you shall return. And so putting ashes on our heads reminds us we're mortal. One day we will die, and we will face God, and we will come before Jesus, and we want to do this to remind ourselves of that fact so that we don't lose sight of it and stop thinking about God and stop thinking about Jesus. And so that's why we have ashes put on our foreheads, to remind us of our death and to signal the fact that we want to repent of our sins.
Francesca, is that helpful to you?
That is. Like I said, that should help me. Thank you guys so much.
You're welcome, Francesca. If you want to hang on, I'd like to send you a copy of Jimmy's book, The Words of Eternal Life, True Happiness and Where to Find It. You might find that helpful, but your boyfriend might find it helpful as well. Jimmy, you were going to say something else?
Yeah, I was also going to just mention she can replay this part of the video or the podcast version afterwards for her boyfriend if she thinks that would be useful.
Okay, Francesca?
Yeah.
All right, hold on the line.
Thank
You're very welcome. Hold on the line if you'd like a copy of that book. And that wraps it up for the open forum portion of today's program. But and we left just one person on the line. If you call tomorrow, Jimmy will be back for open forum. You doing first hour again tomorrow, Jimmy?
First hour again tomorrow,
First hour again tomorrow, so we'll do open forum then. Coming up next, Rylene Simpson is going to be here with us. She's one of the stars, one of the featured people in the beautiful movie Desire of the Everlasting Hills. And she's here to talk with us about same-sex attraction. If this is something you'd like clarity on how the church thinks about this, or some help dealing with the situation in your own life, you are very welcome to call 888-318-7884. See you tomorrow, Jimmy Akin.
See you tomorrow, Cyril Kellett.
The amazing Jimmy.
The great Cyril.
He remembered. I didn't know if he'd remember. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Oh, no, we'll be right back after this on Catholic Answers Live. Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live, on this first weekday of the best time of the year, which is called Daylight Savings Time. Very happy to have you back with us. This hour, Rylene Simpson with us, as promised. Rylene Simpson, you probably know her from the movie Desire of the Everlasting Hills. If you haven't seen the movie Desire of the Everlasting Hills, I highly recommend it to you. Rylene also doing lots of work with, now, Encourage, right? The work you do is with Encourage, or Courage.
Yes, it's in Encourage, the groups for parents, friends, and family.
Well, welcome, Rylene.
Thank you so much. Good to be here.
It's always good to have you. The number, by the way, is 888-318-7884. If you have a question about the Catholic take on sexuality in general, or particularly on same-sex attraction, you're very, very welcome to call. If this is an issue in your life or life of a loved one and you need some help figuring out how you're what your best response is, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. Rylene, those who don't know the film Desire of the Everlasting Hills should check it out. But do you have a website of your own as well? Do you have somewhere where we send people for?
I don't. No.
That's so smart of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those things take a lot to maintain. You have no idea.
Yeah.
I started a blog once, and then I had all these ideas for things to write about, and it takes a lot of work to write that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. That's the way I feel about social media even. Like I do one social media where I respond to people, and that's Twitter, and I respond about every 2 weeks. And I know it annoys people, but I just can't do it. I can't keep up with it.
Although you seem to be a little interactive with the people on Facebook.
Oh, during the show, you mean? Yes,
Yeah.
Only if they're making fun of my shirt. Did you happen to see the last hour? They're all picking on my shirt.
Of course, yeah, sure.
Oh, that's funny. But I don't think that they meant it. I don't think that they meant the horrible things they were saying about my shirt. But maybe they did. It seemed like affectionate teasing to me.
It's affectionate, I'm sure. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about Encourage then, because we have talked about Courage before, but Encourage, how do you get involved in that? What will you encounter when you go to Encourage?
So the idea of Encourage is it is a support group, really, like all the other support groups out there, except that it's for the parents and friends, family members of people who have same-sex attraction and are actively participating in the gay life. So obviously people who have a strong faith are concerned about their loved ones, and this is a way to support those people, help them to make sure that the connection with their loved ones isn't broken, despite the fact of their their belief in God's plan for human sexuality, and to just help them navigate the day-to-day interactions that we have to encounter just all around the whole area of homosexuality, being gay as an identity, just the tactical kind of things like coming home from college with your boyfriend and how are you going to receive your son and his friend, your daughter and her friend, and how to keep that connection, how to welcome the loved one, all of those kind of issues that are practical, also spiritual aspects of the relationship and prayer for each other, and it's support in every possible way we can.
And are there online versions of it as well, or is it always in person?
So, well, of course, until this month, nothing has been in person for anybody, I don't think.
Oh,
but,
yeah, okay.
Lately, yeah. But so our local group has in-person sessions, and but we shifted to online for the duration of COVID. Well, hopefully next month, maybe even, we'll be able to go back to normal and meet in person. But I do think, honestly, this is, you caught me out. I don't know the answer to this. There are definitely Courage meetings that are online.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And I don't know if there's but I actually don't know if there's I'll look it up maybe at the break and see if there are online groups for the Encourage group.
888-318-7884. No, that's fine. That's all right. All the lines full except for one line, so I'm starting to feel like we should probably go to the phones in any case, even though I had one other question for you. I'm going to hold it because lots of people want to talk with you. Yeah, I'll save it. Right. Let's go to Tom in Omaha, Nebraska, listening on KVSS. That's Spirit Catholic Radio in Omaha. Tom, thank you for your call. Go ahead with your question.
Thank you for taking my question. I appreciate it. I have listened to Catholic Answers Live since practically your first program. I've listened to 90% of them. And I've noticed one thing. Whenever a heterosexual couple, married couple, call and they say, well, we're having vocational crisis, either sexual or otherwise, the response, you give them a good response, and then typically then they'll say, well, we're all going to be praying for you, and you have a cross, and so on. And that's good. That's all great. That's wonderful. But I have noticed, though, that whenever it's a homosexual calling with the same kind of vocational crisis and sexual crisis and all the rest of it, rarely, ever, do I hear them say, well, we're all going to pray for you. You're beautiful in God's sight. You're doing a wonderful thing in the church, in the mystical body, and you have an extremely heavy cross to bear, and so on and so forth. There's an animus on the part of Catholic Answers Live, in my opinion, from observation.
Okay.
Well, why is that, and what can you do about it? I mean, can you go ahead and answer.
Okay, and I'm happy to make it a conversation, and maybe Rylene could help me in this conversation as well. As for me personally, I was not aware of that, Tom, but all I can say is I will be more aware of it in the future. I didn't realize that I had responded to people differently, but I don't doubt you at all. I mean, that's often these things, we're blind to them until somebody points it out. So I can say I don't feel any animus. I will say this, however, and maybe Rylene could help me with this. I do feel like it's a more difficult situation to deal with on the radio as a Catholic radio host because it's a morally different situation. And what the church teaches as far as love and sexuality is actually subtle and requires some time. It's not a simple answer. So I try to be maybe aware that there are different levels to it. But I honestly, and I'm very sorry for it, I didn't realize that I was less amenable to people who call, people with same-sex attraction than heterosexual people. So, Tom, do you want to respond to that, and then I'll let Rylene help me out here?
Yeah, first of all, I'm not directing that to you specifically or only. This has gone on for years.
It's an us thing.
Yeah, but as I said, the thing is that they're never told when a homosexual calls. They're never told you have a terrible heavy cross.
Yeah,
you have a terrible cross, and that doesn't have to be drawn out or over any time or anything. And also that we all pray for you, and that if we're good Catholics, we love you. We will pray for you. I don't hear that for homosexuals. I do hear it, though, whenever it's a heterosexual problem. Oh, they can't say enough to them.
Okay, Tom, I all I can say is I'm very much taking your words to heart, and I thank you for them. But, and Rylene, did you want to get in on the conversation, or
Yeah, thank you. So thanks for your call, Tom. And I also think that it's, good feedback. I've only been on the program a couple times, but I do think that for my part, I agree with what Cy said about it being such a sensitive topic. And I know that when I'm on the show, and again, because it's live, I don't want to say I'm nervous, but I do try to pick my words very carefully because it is a sensitive topic and people do feel hurt by the church. And so I feel like I spend a lot of time like picking out the right words and hesitating and trying to think through. And so maybe we do neglect those basic Christian offerings that ordinarily we would do. So I apologize if I have ever done that, and I think I've made a note of it, and I'm going to be aware of it. And I don't know your situation, but we'll pray for you. How's that?
How is that, Tom?
Well, that's great, but again, it's just you're repeating each other and saying, I mean, I don't see what's so hard or so overwhelming. You got to think so much about it and everything to say to someone, you have a heavy cross. We recognize this, but you're our brother, or you're in the mystical body with us. I mean, you don't need to think about that. You don't need to dwell on that to come up with it. When it's heterosexual people, you sure don't think it over. It just flows out, and that's great. That's the way it ought to be.
Okay, I see that. I mean, I feel like I'm just trying to be honest with you, Tom, about like what happens when you're on the air, especially when you're dealing with sensitive moral subjects where there's moms and dads in the car with kids. And, as a matter of fact, I'll tell you the truth, on pretty much everything we do, I'm always thinking about the moms and dads in cars with kids. So, I mean, and it is a morally fraught topic. I mean, I don't think that that's controversial to say that. It's a morally fraught topic. But the love of God is for everybody. And certainly there are, just thousands and thousands and thousands of our brothers and sisters who are going through same-sex attraction, dealing with it in different ways and on different levels. And I will try to be more hospitable, Tom. And I really do appreciate you pointing that out. I honestly wouldn't have thought that was the case if you had not told me.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks, Tom. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back. Rylene Simpson is our guest, and we will. If you have any kind of question about same-sex attraction, what the Catholic Church's teaching is on these things, where to find help for yourself or for a relative, you are welcome to call 888-318-7884. Right back with more with Rylene Simpson.
There's only one Catholic Answers Live.
The Aquinas Writing Advantage program is part of Homeschool Connections' set of online courses for your Catholic homeschool. Homeschool Connections' website is homeschoolconnections.com.
He is honored by the Church as one of the greatest enemies of clergy sexual abuse.
Matthew Bunson and the Doctors of the Church.
In his time, St. Peter Damian fought against the many vices of contemporary clergy, especially sexual abuses among the clergy. In 1051, he wrote that is still considered essential reading for fighting abuse today. He died in 1072.
For more about the Doctors of the Church, visit doctorsofthechurch.com.
Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. One of our favorite people. And when I say our, anytime I say our on this program, I mean my. Here at Catholic Answers, Rylene Simpson. We're one of the stars of the movie Desire of the Everlasting Hills, and here to talk with us about same-sex attraction. And your questions are welcome. And you know what? Tom's challenge to us is perfectly welcome as well. And if that's something, if you've had that experience with the Catholic Church or with our work here, you're perfectly welcome to call, and we'll have a conversation about it. And I hope we'll be honest with one another about what's going on inside of us. But again, I do appreciate Tom's call, and often, Rylene, when we do these shows about same-sex attraction, it is the relatives who call, not necessarily folks who are living with same-sex attraction. But we do want people to feel welcome.
True. Right, absolutely.
All right, let's go to Chris in Iowa. Also listening on Spirit Catholic Radio. Chris, glad to have you. Go ahead with your question for Rylene Simpson.
Yes, thank you. I was calling because of a child of mine with the same-sex attraction, and I'm wondering how to support her while still letting her know that my position with regard to the Catholic faith, which she was brought up in, and I want to make sure I use the right words, make sure that she knows that I love her. She's always included in the family. Her children are always included. But right now, the other person that she has in her life might not be a good fit right at this time because it is a very new relationship.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you, Chris, for your call. Really appreciate that. I think it sounds to me like you've been in this situation for quite some time, just judging from what you said about the history and including the kids and so on. So my guess is that you have already told her what your beliefs are and how you interpret God's plan for human sexuality, right?
Correct.
And
yeah, okay.
Right. Okay. Yes. And so I don't see inside of a relationship like that. That's a loving relationship. You're in contact with her. You're having her and the kids over. There seems to be some turnover in her relationships. So being cautious about that is perfectly reasonable, right? But there's no need to beat the issue to death. She knows where you stand. And so in order to just keep the relationship going, there's no need to repeat it over and over again. You know, I think you're probably doing the exact right thing, is just keep engaged with her. She knows you love her. You tell her you love her. You love the kids. And I think that you're probably doing the right thing already. And are probably a model for other people. And I would encourage you to connect with a local Encourage group if there is one, because other people might be able to learn from your experience.
Well, it still feels very new to me, even though it has been, kind of a tumultuous time. So the Encourage group is what you would say to look toward.
I would find a local Encourage group if there is one. If not, you can contact me. Actually, you can contact me through the CourageRC.org website, or maybe Catholic Answers would be so kind as to get your contact information if you're interested in talking to me directly. But I think it would be a good idea just for you to have people to bounce off situations and to hear what other people are doing, and to really, have that network of people to support you that you can count on for their wisdom.
Raylene, is it odd, as my age is nearly 60, and her younger siblings all seem very comfortable and fine with this, and sometimes I feel like, okay, then maybe the problem lies with me, and that I don't really believe that.
But we do question ourselves, absolutely. It's very easy. Once the whole world seems to be looking at you and saying you're the one who's wrong, it's very easy to start questioning your own logic and sensibilities. So it's not surprising that you're experiencing that. And all of the media, movies, television programs, all the news, everything is really geared towards making this more and more normalized. And so the generation that's younger than ours, I'm in the same generation as you roughly, they've been exposed to a lot more of this than we have, and it does seem normal to them, and it does seem that you're the one who's out of touch with reality. But we know what reality is, Chris. You and I, we understand what reality is, and we know how God designed human beings, and so we're not the ones who are we're not the ones who are wrong, but we are out of sync with the culture, and that's probably the tension that you're feeling.
Does that make sense, Chris?
Okay. Well, yes. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. If you do want to give us a contact, and we'll give it to Raylene, just hang on the line, and Edgar will get your information. I'm going to move on. Thanks very much, Chris.
I guess we should say, be assured that we're praying for you and your situation.
God bless you, Raylene.
Everybody on the show. So
thank you.
We're gonna do that to death today, so that we cover it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm so glad that you said that. See, it'll take me a moment to. I don't know. I just gotta get up to speed here. Russell in San Marcos, Texas, watching on Twitch. I don't even know what that is, but it's cool that you're watching on it. Russell, go ahead with your question for Raylene.
Hi, Raylene. Russell here. I got a question for you about the current. It seems in American Catholics now, on a Pew Research recently, they're showing that over 50% of American Catholics are becoming more secularized and inoculating themselves from the Roman Catholic edicts on the LGBT issue, where over 50% of American Catholics are pro-LGBT for equal rights on everything across the board. And it seems that they're disavowing themselves from taking Roman edicts seriously in any way on this issue. Why do you think that trend is going on?
Okay, yes, thank you for your question. So I think that in our church, we could say this about almost any topic that you can bring up, is that we have done over the last 40, 50 years a very poor job of catechizing our people. And while I think that John Paul II, Pope John Paul II did a magnificent job in explaining the human person in his Theology of the Body writings, it really hasn't reached the teachings haven't reached a kind of that critical point that they need to get to in order to have a common understanding. And frankly, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and what I was told about sex was so minimal, and it had no connection to the reasons why certain things are prohibited and other behaviors are not, and why you had to be married, and why, none of that had any reasoning given to me behind why that was. It was just, this is the list, right? This is the list of things you can and cannot do, and the why was answered with because God said so or because the church says so. So I think that there's a real there's a gap between the teachings and the I guess propagation of those teachings to the faithful, and I think that's true. You can we were just the Synod on Synodality. We just had a parish group get together about that, and the lack of understanding about all kinds of Catholic teachings around the table was quite astounding. From the fact that why do we fast for an hour before communion? I mean, that was a question that came up in our group. And so there's just this wide gap. There's this wide gap of understanding. But the interesting thing to me is that the church really has the fullness of, it's the most complete understanding of a human person that you can imagine if you actually delve into our church's teachings and into the theology of the body. And if we could get just the people who are listening to this right now, if they could dig in, read it, understand it, and start talking about it, I think would make a lot of progress.
Russell, thanks very much. I hope that was helpful to you. Thank you very much for the question. Are you going to say a prayer, Rylene, or?
Yeah, I think we'll pray for you and your situation, Russell. We're not making fun of Tom. We're just we're alert.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. That's exactly right. But Russell, thanks. I appreciate that. Let's go to Luke in Tri-Cities, Washington, listening on 100.7 FM. Luke, thanks very much for your call. Go ahead with your question for Rylene Simpson.
Hey guys, I appreciate this. I just had a comment real quick. Not to diminish what Tom said or anything. I can't speak to his experience, but I do feel like the nature of his question just sort of assumed something was true. And I'm going to speak to my experience. I've been listening for the last few years, and I think that the people that you guys have on the show, by and large, do a very good job of being compassionate and understanding when they're asked a lot of hard, sensitive questions frequently.
Oh, well, thank you.
I think you guys do a wonderful job.
I appreciate that affirmation.
I'm not sure what. Yeah, no worries. But you guys really do. It's not an easy thing that you guys are doing, and you guys, I think, handle it with a lot of grace and a lot of compassion. No one's perfect, but I think you guys do a great job.
Well, thank you. Would you include Trent Horn in that, or would?
I've noticed something. You really have a thing for Trent Horn. What's the deal? Is he the punching bag?
It's only a joke. It's just because Trent used to kill me all the time, and in his philosophical examples, he'd say, "Is it ethical to do this or that to cycle it?" And so then I started that. And that's all it is. But you were going to say something else.
Well done turning the tables. I do have a question on this issue. I've heard some mixed things about this, and I just want clarification. When it comes to people who are going to join the seminary, because there's all this scandal about priests and everything, but if you have a priest who has same-sex attraction, or someone going in seminary, is that is same-sex attraction a disqualifier from going into this seminary? Or what if they're going to live chastely?
Okay. I'll tell you what, Luke, it's a cliffhanger because we got the music playing. We'll have to get to it when we come back right after this. We're talking with Rylene Simpson. Your call's welcome. 888-31-TRUTH.
This is Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of San Francisco. Thank you for listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the Church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com.
Most of us Catholic parents agree our number one goal in life is to pass on the faith to our children. But here's the bad news. Today's world has a million ways to steal your kid's soul. Don't be afraid, says Father Sebastian Walsh. God loves your children even more than you do, and He desires their salvation more than anything. In his groundbreaking new book, Always a Catholic, Father Walsh shows you how to cooperate with God to bring about the fulfillment of His will for your kids. Always a Catholic reminds us that keeping our kids in the faith is about the way we live our Catholicism in our own lives and as a family from day to day. Order your copy of Always a Catholic by visiting shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
God is always ready to receive your urgent prayer intentions.
Join us with yours tomorrow on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on most of these EWTN stations.
Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. Luke is on the line. We'll get to Luke's question. I just want to remind you that our guest this hour is Rylene Simpson. We're talking about the Catholic Church and same-sex attraction, Catholic faith and same-sex attraction. If this is something that has affected your life, you'd like some help with, you'd like some direction with, even if you would like to be critical of the Church's position and engage in that conversation, you're very welcome here. 888-318-7884. Luke is in the Tri-Cities in Washington, and he wants to know about, what about a man who might want to go to the seminary to become a priest, but has attractions to people of the same sex. So is that a disqualifier or what?
And over the break, I was trying to look up the actual document, and I didn't get it to my fingertips quickly enough. You did? Okay.
Yeah. Concerning the criteria for the discernment of vocations with persons with homosexual tendencies in view of their admission to the seminary and to holy orders, 2005. How do you like that title?
That is a succinct,
it's very Victorian
really title.
But there it is.
There is a document. So that is the document that goes into detail about the admission of men to the seminary. I think there are a couple of things to think about for a man discerning. Somewhere in that document is language. I don't know if it uses the word deep-seated or intractable or something like that. But so if it's, but there's language in there that kind of states the criteria that says if it's a situation that's kind of unmoving and kind of at a deep level, then they're probably not candidates. Again, this actually would be one of those situations if a person felt he had a vocation that would be seen as definitely a cross. But I think the thing to keep in mind is all of us are called as Catholics to avoid the near occasion of sin. And if a man who wants to enter the seminary has same-sex attraction, it would be even more of a burden for him than most people, because he's going to be surrounded by other men in an all-male environment. And I think that it would be maybe unwise to put yourself in that situation, even if you didn't have even if this was not this deep-seated and intractable kind of situation. I wish I had the right words out of the document. Sorry, but I think that it maybe wouldn't be the advisable, just from that particular spiritual sense, that you would be surrounding yourself with potential temptation, and we all have an obligation when we recognize that we have a weakness toward a particular sin, that we have to avoid those near occasions. So, from a spiritual perspective, I think it would be inadvisable. And then the document itself goes into the rest of the criteria.
Okay, Luke?
Okay, no, and what was the name of that document again?
I will tell you, it's a long one. Let me just bring it up here in front of me. Okay, so it's called Instruction Concerning the Criteria for the Discernment of Vocations with Regard to Persons with Homosexual Tendencies in View of Their Admission to the Seminary and to Holy Orders. And it came out in 2005 from the Congregation for Catholic Education. So I hope that's helpful.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry we don't have anything with a longer title to recommend to you, but we do the best we can.
Next time.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. Thanks, Luke. I appreciate the call. Let's go to Trish in Durwood, Maryland, listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM satellite radio. Trish, thank you for the call. I didn't know there was a Durwood, Maryland. For some reason, that makes me think of Bewitched.
Oh, no, not at all. Thank you for taking my call.
Wait a second. Hang on. Do you know why it makes me think of Bewitched? If it's all right, it's because
that was the name of her husband.
No, Darren was her name, but her mother, Andorra, didn't like Darren, and so she called him Durwood. That was her nickname for him. And so I apologize for that completely pointless discursus. Go ahead with your question for Rylene.
Thank you, and thank you, Rylene. My question is this. I heard a theologian in the Catholic Church say or suggest that same-sex attraction may be malleable. And I wonder what your thoughts are on that, and if there is some thinking that is true, are there therapies or spiritual guides to help people move in a direction toward a more heterosexual way of life and relationships that are heterosexual?
So I have personal experience in this area, which I will call upon, and so this is my experience and the experience of quite a number of people that I know. So I would say it is positively true that the condition or the situation of same-sex attraction is malleable, although the culture wants to believe that it's not, that it's fixed, and that it can't be changed. But my experience is that I no longer feel attracted to women. I know a number of men and women both who have found opposite sex husbands and wives and are living that vocation of marriage out, and quite happily. It doesn't necessarily mean that they might not have thoughts that involve same-sex attraction or temptations, but that they find a healthy way to relate to the opposite sex, which is really the more important thing. I'm not sure that there's certainly, I'm not aware of any Catholic program that brings that about. It's not a focus, for instance, of the Courage Group. The Courage Group is more about chastity and living your life out to the fullest, having same-sex friendships that are chaste and things like that. So it's not a focus for the Catholic community, but there are certainly therapists out there, and you can kind of Google them. But there are therapists out there who have had success in this area, and honestly, a lot of times it has to do with cleaning up other anxieties that are just seem peripheral to the same-sex attraction dilemma, but are not, not specifically. How do I want to say this? They're not sexual in nature, but other anxieties and other conditions and thought patterns can lead to this as well. So yeah, it's definitely, in my opinion, it's definitely malleable. I've seen lots of evidence of it, and if nothing else, we certainly know that people can live chastely, which is our number one call first. But I think also maybe the way you're thinking, Trish, is the way I think, that we do have to become more and more healthy. And I think having healthy opposite sex relationships is an indicator of our own health as well. So it's possible for sure.
What do you think, Trish?
I'm so happy to hear you say that, because I was hoping that was the case, and I thought it might be the case. But I don't think that the church or society ever suggests that that's a possibility for people who are carrying a heavy burden and may be able to see things differently, or at least develop in another direction that is healthier and happier. And I thank you so much for your response. That's very, very hopeful.
And, let's never forget prayer also. So God does anything he wants.
Thanks very much, Trish. I appreciate that. I appreciate that the two of you have this beautiful Christian conversation, and I started it all off with a completely inane reference to the TV show Bewitched. I feel like that's my role sometimes. Before we get into the mature Christianity, let me say the following dumb thing. Trish, I really do appreciate it. We got to take a quick break. A couple more folks on the line, but we have time for more callers if you would like to call. Talking about same-sex attraction today with our guest, Rylene Simpson. 888-318-7884 is the number. 888-318-7884. Store-wide sale going on right now at shop.catholic.com. 10 to 25% off everything. In some cases, more than that. Hundreds of great Catholic resources to choose from. And the School of Apologetics courses are 50% off through the end of March. All of them, every single one, 50% off at the School of Apologetics. You can find out about all of the savings and get $5 flat rate shipping on everything you buy over at shop.catholic.com.
It's all about the truth. Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
EWTN is everywhere. EWTN radio programming is provided free of charge to over 500 domestic and international AM and FM radio stations. It's a great teaching tool for Catholics and non-Catholics alike. For a complete list of EWTN AM and FM stations across America, visit EWTNradio.net. At the bottom of the page, click Affiliates. EWTN, the Global Catholic Network.
Do you want to end abortion, halt the attack on traditional marriage, and ensure religious freedom for ourselves and for our grandchildren? To do this, we must convert the culture. St. Paul Street Evangelization is a grassroots initiative that recognizes this need and takes it to the streets. If you're interested in peacefully sharing the gospel in your area, visit streetevangelization.com to learn more.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Gave up sweets for Lent, and it's Pi Day. That is not right. Did you know that it's Pi Day, Rylene?
Oh, 3.141.
Oh,
I guess so.
She knew it. She went down to 3 digits. I only did 2. Jimmy did 4. 888-318-7884, the number. We're going to Joseph in Oklahoma now, listening on EWTN Radio. Joseph, we're happy and glad to have you. I can put those together. Go ahead, Joseph, with your question. He dropped? Oh, I'm very sorry. Okay. We've got other folks on the line getting their calls screened, so we will be right back with them. Valerie called earlier just to say this. I'm familiar with Encourage. There is a virtual audio conference for parents, and I wanted to share that information because I had asked you that before, Rylene.
Thank you, Valerie. What would we do without you?
We wouldn't know that. That's for sure. 888-318-7884, the number. Rylene Simpson is our guest. We're talking about same-sex attraction. Maybe you could say a word about, because I know that there are many people listening who go, why do they say same-sex attraction? Why don't they use other words for that? So would you mind saying a word about why we use those words?
Yes, thanks for that question. That's pretty important. Words are important. And first of all, there's a term that people like a lot, which is gay. And but of course, gay has other meanings as well. And there's no real definition about, if you say you're gay, what that means. Many of us find that there's a lot of political baggage loaded into the word with the word gay. And a lot of people feel that it's an identity, that you take on an identity when you take on the label gay. And so we think of it in the Catholic Church more as a situation that you're in that you're experiencing something. So that's why we like to say people experience same-sex attraction. So you're experiencing something, but it doesn't make it your identity. Or you might have feelings, but those feelings do not constitute an identity, because our identity is always in Christ as a daughter, son of God. And so that's our primary identity, the way we like to think about it.
That identity thing is intense nowadays, too. I mean, I think in some ways, people almost want to take on an identifiable identity. I'm not saying this about people who identify as gay, but of any kind, because we're kind of all floating out here and we need something to latch onto that says, this is what gives my life meaning.
Yeah, I think that's true. A label is a handy way to compartmentalize people or to categorize people. And really, should we be doing that? Even I hesitate to say, I'm an accountant, or I'm a software engineer, or I'm a lawyer, or any of the, even that seems like you're saying that's your identity. And maybe, unfortunately, it is, but it doesn't need to be.
I never say any of those things about myself.
I'm a radio host. You ever said that?
No, well, yes, I do. Yes, at restaurants I say that. I'm a radio host. Could I get in first? And in Michigan, it never works, never does a thing for me. And in Michigan, listening on 990 AM. Thanks for the call, Ann. Go ahead with your question for Rylene.
Yeah, hey, so my daughter is suffering from same-sex attraction, and she says it's the biggest contribution to her, quote-unquote, decision to be gay is her dad is a jerk and not a good role model as a father and husband. So she says she's kind of turned away from men because of that. Is that a thing? Do people just make up their mind to become gay because of something like that?
Oh, wow. Great question, Anne. Thank you for thank you for that question. It's a very interesting one. So in the psychological community, back when people were allowed to study these kinds of things, there is many psychologists would make a connection between the opposite sex parental relationship, or even the same sex parental relationship as a cause, because I think that the tendency is always to look at those foundational relationships and see if they were broken in some way, no matter what your problem is, whether it's same sex or not. I will tell you that there is a pattern in the same sex attracted women that I have known, that there is a problem frequently between the father and the daughter. And so I'm not going to ask you if your husband is a jerk or if her dad is a jerk, but you can see a pattern of if there's been any kind of like violence towards the child or any kind of abuse towards the child. You can grow a sense of fear or a sense of timidity or a sense of anger towards the opposite sex in those situations, and react. Usually I've seen it unconsciously. I haven't seen it somebody making a conscious choice, but certainly in this day and age when we're surrounded by role models, if you want to call them that, role models who are modeling gay behavior and it's acceptable, and society, the culture accepts it, then of course you could make a conscious choice.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Anne?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Does that make sense to you?
It does. I can see the part where you would have that negative feeling toward males, but I don't understand how it flips the switch to therefore becoming sexually attracted toward females. So I'm getting the first part, but I'm not getting the second part, and maybe it's because I'm of that older culture that doesn't really understand the whole thing. I don't get it. I don't particularly like it, and I don't understand it. So that's where I'm getting, and I do understand the first part that you said, that does make sense, but then switching over to the attraction to females, sexually attracted to females, because you're afraid or dislike males, I'm going to have to work on that.
Well, okay, so I'll give you, I think that's a good clarification too from your understanding of it, because if you are, so we all have a need, we all have a need to make an intimate connection with somebody. And so if you are in a situation where you're rejecting consciously or unconsciously the opposite sex, and you have this need where to bond with somebody and to be very close to somebody and to share intimacy with someone, then you could consciously or unconsciously make a choice to explore that. And frankly, once you start exploring any of those kinds of activities, then that kind of opens you up to be to fall into it more and more. It's the feelings that you engender in any kind of exploration like that would reinforce a positive reaction towards the same sex in that particular case. I don't want to sound like I'm a psychologist. I have no psychology. I'm just explaining things, by the way, according to my own experience in life. So I don't have any scientific papers to back up any of this that I'm talking about. But.
Thanks, Anne. I'm going to leave it there because we'll try to get to everybody before we have to close the show. Thank you very much for the call. Let's go to Dennis all the way down in Australia watching on YouTube. Hi, Dennis. Good morning.
Hello, Si. So who's the lady who's...
Rylene Simpson is our guest. Rylene.
Oh, Rylene. Hello, Rylene. Nice to listen to you, and good to talk to you, Si. I've listened to Catholic Answers a lot over the years on YouTube, and this is my first occasion to call in.
Oh,
I was quite surprised I got through, actually.
Well, we got a straight line to Australia. Any Australians called, anybody from the Philippines calls. We love people that are in the next day already. If people call from the next day,
right,
like you're calling
That's
from
right.
Tuesday morning.
It's Tuesday.
Yeah, then you get right
Yeah,
in.
it's Tuesday. It's 10 minutes. It's 10 minutes to 11 here Tuesday morning. So you're still Monday.
That's right. We're still Monday. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. You know, but I don't. But Dennis, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Just looking at the clock, and you better ask Rylene your question.
Okay, I'll make it. Yes, sorry. Rylene, yeah, I'll try and make the question quick. My brother, he's in what he describes as a polyamorous relationship. He's married. He's married to his wife, but he's also in a relationship with a man, and he was very Catholic at one stage, but then he's very anti-Catholic, and he won't talk to me at all. I'm just really, I suppose my question is, how can I deal with this myself, and how can I help or talk about the Catholic faith to someone with this point of view? With this polyamory, to me it's all very confusing. I don't understand any of it.
Yeah, thank you for that question. It is very confusing, and this idea of polyamory is fairly new. In the open, it's out in the open now, maybe at least more than it used to be. But so you're having trouble dealing with it because it does go against the, I guess what we would say is the natural state of things, and we would want a man-woman relationship to be exclusive. That's what we deal with. I think that there's probably nothing that you can say to your brother that is going to help him change his mind. You said he was faithful before, very faithful or devout, and so he probably understands the church's teachings, God's plan for human sexuality. I think what you need to do is pray for him, and get your whole family to pray for him. Pray for him frequently, constantly. Because there's probably only one person who can change his mind, and that's the Holy Spirit can get in there and help him. I think that in these and I have less experience with the polyamory, so I will tell you that this isn't from personal experience, but from what I've read, it's very damaging to all of the relationships. Once it continues for any length of time, he's going to, there's going to be damage to him and his relationship with his wife and other things. But sometimes we just have to let people make their mistakes and learn from them that way. Because some of us, I know, for me personally, I don't learn from anybody's mistakes but my own. And I get out there and make a lot of them. So
I suppose the only way I can rationalise it myself is that if he's following his conscience to the best of his ability, well, then God won't condemn him. And there's always purgatory where everything the light of truth is shone on the whole situation, and I suppose he'll have that opportunity in purgatory. But I hope and pray that there's something happens, there's some change in his life before then. But I doubt that'll happen. But then, well, nothing's impossible for God.
We have a wonderful saint, St. Augustine. Nobody would have thought that he would end up Catholic and a bishop and a father of the church and all of that stuff. So there's hope for everybody, every one of us. So don't give up hope. Keep the faith. Keep praying.
Was it Saint Monica? Was Saint Monica his mother?
Saint Monica. His mom.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And she her prayers helped him. Yeah. Oh, well, it's right. Well, with his faith and God, anything's possible.
Indeed, it is. As a matter of fact, it's more than possible. I mean, God is always willing to reach out in love and transform lives. I'm certainly evidence of that. And you might not believe, you'd be shocked at this, but I used to be a jerk. And Rylene, I imagine God has brought some transformation.
I was a mess.
Right. I really was a jerk too.
We will pray for your brother and your situation.
Yes, and God bless you, Dennis. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate that very much. I don't know if we left anybody. No, I think we did. We got to everybody. So nice job, Rylene.
Oh, thank you. It was a lot of fun, Si.
Yeah, God bless you in your work with Encourage and with Courage. And again, if people want to see Rylene's story, you can check out Desire of the Everlasting Hills. It's a wonderful movie And we'll see you again soon, I hope, Rylene.
All right. Take care. Enjoy your pie.
No, I don't get any pie for Pie Day because it's Lent. So maybe I'll just meditate on the number 3.14. All right, we'll see you tomorrow for 2 hours of open forum, God willing, right here, Catholic Answers Live.